Good wishes to all of you. Textbook in history for class 11. Themes in world history. Section 3. Changing traditions. The three orders. Changing cultural traditions. Confrontation of cultures. Changing traditions. We have seen how by the 9th century large parts of Asia and America witnessed the growth and expansion of great empires, some nomadic, some based on well developed cities and trading networks that centered on them. The difference between the Macedonian, Roman, and Arab empires and the ones that preceded them, the Egyptian, Assyrian, Chinese, Mauryans, was that they covered greater areas of territory and were continent or transcontinental in nature. The Mongol Empire was similar. Different cultural encounters were crucial to what what to what took place. The arrivals of empires was always sudden, but they were almost always the result of changes that had been taking place over a long time in the core of what would become an empire. Traditions in world history could change in different ways. In Western Europe during the period from the 9th to the 7th centuries, 17th centuries, much that we connect with the modern times evolved slowly. The development of scientific knowledge based on experiment rather than religious belief. Serious thought about the organization of government with attention to the creation of civil services, parliaments, and different codes of law, improvements in technology that was used in industry and agriculture. The consequences of these changes could be felt with great force outside Europe. As we have seen by the 5th century CE, the Roman Empire in the West had disintegrated in Western and Central Europe. The remains of the Roman Empire were slowly adapted to the administrative requirements and needs of tribes that had established kingdoms there. However, urban centers were smaller in Western Europe than further east. By the 9th century, the commercial and urban centers, Aix, London, Rome, Siena, though small, could not be dismissed. From the 9th to the 11th centuries, there were major developments in the countryside in Western Europe. The church and royal government developed a combination of Roman institutions with the customary rules of tribes. The finest examples of the empire of Charlemagne in Western and Central Europe at the beginning of the 9th century, even after its rapid collapse, urban centers and trading networks persisted, albeit under heavy attack from Hungarians, Vikings, and others. What happened was called feudalism. Feudalism was marked by agricultural production around castles and manor houses where lords of the manor possessed land that was cultivated by peasant serfs who pledged them loyalty, goods and services. These lords in turn pledged their loyalty to great lords who were vassals of kings. The Catholic Church, centered on the papacy, supported this state of affairs and itself possessed land. In a world where uncertainty uncertainties of life, poor sense of medicine, and low life expectancy were common. The church showed people how to behave, behave so that life after death at least would be tolerable. Monasteries were created where God fearing people could devote themselves to the service of God in the way Catholic churchmen thought fit. Equally, churches were part of a network of scholarship that ran from the Muslim states of Spain to Byzantium, and they provided the petty kings of Europe with a sense of the opulence of the eastern Mediterranean and beyond. The influence of commerce and towns in the federal order came to evolve and change, encouraged by Mediterranean entrepreneurs in Venice and Genoa from the 12th century. Their ships carried on a growing trade with the Muslim states and the remains of the Roman Empire in the east. Attracted by the lure of wealth in these areas and inspired by the idea of freeing holy places associated with Christ from Muslims, European kings reinforced their links across the Mediterranean during the Crusades. Trade within Europe improved, centered on fairs and the port cities of the Baltic Sea and the North Sea and stimulated by a growing population. Take a look at this image. The palace of the popes in Avignon, a 14th century town in South France. Take a look at this illustration. The palace of the dog in Venice, 15th century. Opportunities for commercial expansion coincided with changing attitudes concerning the value of life, respect for human beings and living things that marked much of Islamic art and literature, and the example of Greek art and ideas that came to Europe from Byzantine trade encouraged Europeans to take a new look at the world. And from the 14th century, in what is called the Renaissance, especially in North Italian towns, the wealthy became less concerned with life after death and more with the wonders of its life itself. Sculptors, painters, and writers became interested in humanity and discovery of the world. By the end of the 15th century, the state of affairs encouraged travel and discovery as never before. Voyages of discovery took place. Spaniards and Portuguese, who had traded with northern Africa, pushed further down the coast of Western Africa, finally leading to journeys around the Cape of Good Hope to India, which had a great reputation in Europe as a source of spices that were in great demand. Columbus attempted to find a western route to India and in 1492 reached the islands which the Europeans called the West Indies. Other explorers tried to find a northern route to India and China via the Arctic. European travelers encountered a range of different peoples in the course of their journeys. In part, they were interested in learning from them. The papacy encouraged the work of the Northern Africa geographer and traveler Hassan al-Wazan, later known in Europe as Leo Africanus, who wrote the first geography of Africa in the early 16th century for Pope Leo X. Jesuit churchmen observed and wrote on Japan in the 16th century, and Englishman Will Adams became a friend and counselor of the Japanese shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu. In the early 17th century, as in the case of Hassan al Wazan papers that the Europeans encountered in the Americas often took a great interest in them and sometimes worked for them. For example, an Aztec woman, later known as the Dona Marina, befriended the Spanish conqueror of Mexico, Cortes, and interpreted and negotiated for him. In their encounters, Europeans were sometimes cautious, self effacing, and observant, even as they frequently attempted to establish trade monopolies and enforce their authority by force of arms, as the Portuguese attempted to do in the Indian Ocean after Vasco da Gama's arrival in Calicut, present day Kozhikode, in 1498. In other cases, they were overbearing, aggressive, and cruel and adopted an attitude of superiority to those they met. Considering such people ignorant, the Catholic Church encouraged both attitudes. The church was the center for the study of other cultures and languages, but encouraged attacks on people it saw as unchristian. From the point of view of non-Europeans, the encounter with Europe varied for much of the Islamic lands and India and China. Though Europeans remained a curiosity until the end of the 17th century, they were perceived as hardy traders and seamen who had little to contribute to their sense of the larger world. The Japanese learned some of the advantages of European technology quickly. For instance, they had begun large scale production of muskets by the late 16th century in the Americas. Enemies of the Aztec Empire sometimes used the Europeans to challenge the power of the Aztecs. At the same time, the disease the Europeans brought devastated the population, leading to the death of over 90% of the people in some areas by the end of the 16th century. Timeline 3. 1300 to 1700, the period under consolidation witnessed several major developments in Europe, including changes in agriculture and the lives of peasants. It was also marked by a range of cultural developments. This timeline draws attention to contacts between continents stimulated in many instances by the growth of trade. The impact of these contacts was varied. While ideas, inventions, and goods were shared across continents, there was also constant warfare between kingdoms to control land, resources, and access to trade route. As a result, men and women were often displaced and enslaved. If not exterminated, in many ways the lives of people were transformed beyond recognition. Dates 1300 to 25 Africa empty Europe. Alhambra and Granada emerges as important cultural centers in Spain. 1325 to 50 Plague in Egypt. 1348 to 55 Africa. Europe 100 years war between England and France. 1337 1453 Black Death, a form of plague, spreads throughout Europe. 1348 1352 75 Africa. Ibn Battuta explores the Sahara. Europe. French peasants protest against high taxes. 1358 1375 to 1400 Africa. Rat. Europe. Peasants revolt in Britain. 1381 Geoffrey Chaucer writes the Canterbury Tales, on one of the earliest compositions in English. 1388 1400 to 1425 Both African Europe empty. 1425 to 50 Portuguese begin slave trading. 1442 Europe empty. 1450 to 75 Songhai Empire in West Africa established based on trading networks across the Sahara. Portuguese expeditions and settlements along the west coast of Africa. 1471 onwards Africa. Europe. First printed book appears in Europe. Leonardo Vinci 1452 to 1519 painter, architect, inventor in Italy. 1475 to 1500 Portuguese convert the king of Bokongo to Christianity. Europe. Establishment of the Tudor dynasty in England. 1485 1500 to 25 African slaves taken to work on sugar plantations in America. 1510 Ottoman Turks conquer Egypt. 1517 Africa. Europe. Coffee from South America is drunk in Europe for the first time. 1517 and tobacco, chocolate, tomatoes, and turkey are also introduced. Martin Luther attempts to reform the Catholic Church. 1517 1525 to 50 Africa empty. Europe. Copernicus propounds theory about solar system. 1543 1552 to 75 Africa empty. Europe. William Shakespeare 1564 to 1616 dramatist in England. 1575 to 1600 Africa empty. Jason invents the microscope. 1590s. 1600 to 25 Africa. Oyo Kingdom of Nigeria at the height of its power centers for metalworking. Europe. One of the first novels, Don Quixote, written in Spanish. 1605 1625 to 50 Africa empty. Europe. William Harvey demonstrated that blood is pumped through the body by the heart. 1628 1650 to 75 Portuguese destroy the Congo Kingdom. 1662 Europe. Louis XIV, King of France. 1638 to 1715 1675 to 1700 Africa empty. Europe. Peter the Great 1682 1725 attempts to modernize Russia. 1300 to 25 both Asia and South Asia empty. 1325 to 1315 Asia empty. South Asia. Establishment of the Vijayanagara Empire. 1336 1350 to 75 Asia. Ming Dynasty in China 1368 onwards. South Asia empty. 1375 to 1400 both Asia and South Asia empty. 1400 to 25 Asia empty. South Asia emergence of regional sultanates. 1425 to 50 Asia empty. South Asia also empty. 1450 to 75 Asia. Ottoman Turks capture Constantinople 1453. South Asia empty. 1475 to 1500 Asia empty. South Asia. Vasco da Gama reaches India 1498. 1500 to 25 Asia. Portuguese enter into China opposite driven out to Mako 1522. South Asia empty. 1525 to 50 Asia empty. South Asia. Babur established Mughal control over North India. First Battle of Panipat 1526. 1550-75 Asia empty. South Asia. Akbar 1556 to 1605 consolidates Mughal rule. 1575 to 1600 Asia. 1550 to 75 Asia empty. South Asia. Akbar 1556 to 1605 consolidates Mughal rule. 1575 to 1600 Asia. First Kabuki play staged in Japan. 1586 Shah Abbas 1587 to 1629 of Persia introduces European methods of military training. South Asia empty. 1600 to 25 Tokugawa shogunate established in Japan 1603. South Asia establishment of the British East India Company 1600. 1625 to 50 all European trade with the exception of the Dutch forbidden to trade with Japan 1637. Manchu rule in China 1644 onwards, which lasts for nearly 300 years, growing demand in Europe for Chinese tea and silk. South Asia construction of the Taj Mahal 1632 to 53. 1650 to 75 both Asia and South Asia empty. 1675 to 1700 Asia empty. South Asia sculpture on wall. Dates 1300 to 25 Americas Aztec capital at Tenochtitlan, Mexico 1325 building temples, development of irrigation system and accounting system. Quipu Australia Pacific Islands 1325 to 52 1425 to 50 both Americas and Australia Pacific Islands empty. 1450 to 75 Americas Incas established control over Peru 1465 Australia empty. 1475 to 1500 Americas Columbus reaches the West Indies 1492 Australia Pacific Islands empty. 1500 to 25 Spanish conquest of Mexico 1521 Americas Australia Pacific Island empty. 1500 to 25 Australia Pacific Island Magellan a Spanish navigator reaches the Pacific Ocean 1519. 1525 to 50 Americas French explorers reach Canada 1534 Australia empty. 1550 to 75 Spanish conquest of Peru 1572 Australia empty. 1575 to 1600 Americas empty. Australia Dutch sailors reach Australia by accident. 1600 to 25 Americas England sets up its first colonies in North America. 1607 the first slaves are brought from West Africa to Virginia. 1619 Australia Spanish sailors reach Tahiti 1606. 1625 to 50 Dutch found New Amsterdam now called New York. 1626 first printing press is set up in Massachusetts. 1635 Australia Dutch navigator Abel Tasman sails around Australia without realizing it. He then lands on Van Diemen's Land, later called Tasmania. He also reaches New Zealand, but thinks it is a part of a huge landmass. 1650 to 75, America's first sugar plantation are established in the West Indies. 1654, Australia empty. 1675 to 1700, French colonies the Mississippi Basin, naming it Louisiana after King Louis 14, 1682. Australia empty. Activity. You may have noticed that the Solomon Australia Pacific Island has very few record dates. This is because the peoples in these areas often used other forms of recording, including paintings such as the one shown above. List at least one event process from each of the preceding five columns which an Australian painter may have found worth recording. List another five which may have seemed irrelevant to her by him. Sixth theme, the three orders. In this chapter, we shall learn about the socio-economic and political changes which occurred in Western Europe between the 9th and 16th centuries. After the fall of the Roman Empire, many groups of Germanic people from Eastern and Central Europe occupied regions of Italy, Spain, and France. In the absence of any unifying political force, military conflict was frequent, and the needed to gather resources to protect one's land became very important. Social organization was therefore centered on the control of land. Its features were derived from both the imperial Roman traditions and German customs. Christianity, the official religion of the Roman Empire from the 4th century, survived the collapse of Rome and gradually spread to Central and Northern Europe. The church also became a major landholder and political power in Europe. The three orders, the focus of this chapter, are three social categories: Christian priests, landowning nobles, and peasants. The changing relationship between these three groups was an important factor in shaping European history for several centuries. Over the last 100 years, European historians have done detailed work on the historical of regions, even of individual villages. This was possible because from the medieval period, there is a lot of material in the form of documents, details of land ownership, prices, and legal cases. For example, churches kept records of births, marriages, and deaths, which have made it possible to understand the structure of families and of population. The inscription in churches give information about trades association, and songs and stories give a sense of festival and community activities. All these can be used by historians to understand economic and social life and changes over a long period, like increase in population, or over a short period, like peasants' revolts. Of the many scholars in France who have worked on feudalism, one of the earliest was Bloch. Mark Bloch, 1886 to 1944, was one of the group of scholars who argued that history consisted of much more than just political history. International relations and the lives of great people. He emphasized the importance of geography in shaping human history and the need to understand the collective behavior or attitudes of a group of people. Bloch's Federal Society is about European, particularly French, society between 1900 and 1300, describing in remarkable detail social relations and heritages, land management, and the popular culture of the period. His career was cut short tragically when he was shot by the Nazis in the Second World War. The term medieval era refers to the period in European history between the 5th and the 15th centuries. Map 1, Western Europe. An introduction to feudalism. The term feudalism has been used by historians to describe the economic, legal, political, and social relationships that existed in Europe in the medieval era, derived from the German word feudo, which means a piece of land. It refers to the kind of society that developed in medieval France and later in England and in southern Italy. In an economic sense, feudalism refers to a kind of agriculture production which is based on the relationship between lords and peasants. They later cultivated their own land as well as that of the lord. The peasants performed labor services for the lords, who in exchange provided military protection. They also had extensive judicial control over peasants. Thus, feudalism went beyond and economic to cover the social and political aspects of life as well, although its roots have been traced to practices that existed in the Roman Empire and during the age of the French king Charlemagne, Charlemagne 742 to 814. Feudalism as an established way of life in large parts of Europe may be said to have emerged later in the 11th century. The head of the Eastern Church in Constantinople had a similar relationship with the Byzantine Emperor. France and England. Gaul, a province of the Roman Empire, had two extensive coastlines, mountain ranges, long rivers, forests, and large tracts of plains suited to agriculture. The Franks, a Germanic tribe, gave their name to Gaul, making it France. From the 6th century, this region was a kingdom ruled by Frankish French kings who were Christians. The French had very strong links with the church, which were further strengthened when in 800 the Pope gave King Charlemagne the title of Holy Roman Emperor to ensure his support. Across a narrow channel lay the island of England, Scotland, which in the 11th century was conquered by a duke from the French province of Normandy. Early history of France 481. Clovis becomes king of the Franks 486. Clovis and the Franks begin the conquest of northern Gaul 496. Clovis and the Franks convert to Christianity 714. Charles Martel becomes mayor of the palace 751. Martel's son Pepin deposes the Frankish ruler, becomes king, and establishes a dynasty. Wars of conquest double the size of his kingdom. 768. Pepin succeeded by his son Charlemagne Charles the Great. 800. Pope Leo III crowns Charlemagne as Holy Roman Emperor. 840 onwards, raids by Vikings from Norway. The three orders. French priests believed in the concept that people were members of one of the three orders, depending on their work. A bishop stated, "Here below some pray, others fight, still others work." Thus, the three orders of society were broadly the clergy, the nobility, and the peasantry. Abbe is driven from the Syriac Abba meaning a father, and Abbe was governed by an abbot or an abbess. In the 12th century, Abbas Hildegard of Bingen wrote, "Who would think of herding his entire cattle in one stable, cows, donkeys, sheep, goat, without difference? Therefore, it is necessary to establish a difference among human beings so that they do not destroy each other. God makes the distinctions among his flock in heaven as soon as on earth. All are loved by him, yet there is no equality among them." Take a look at illustration. French nobles starting for a hunter, 15th century painting. The second order, the nobility. Priests placed themselves in the first order and nobles in the second. The nobility had, in reality, a central role in social processes. This is because they controlled land. This land was the outcome of a practice called vassalage. The kings of France were linked to the people by vassalage, similar to the practice among the Germanic peoples, of whom the Franks were one. The big land owners, the nobles, were vassals of the king, and peasants were vassals of the landowners. A nobleman accepted the king as his senior, and they made a mutual promise. The seigneur lord was derived from a word meaning one who provided bread, would protect the vassal who would be loyal to him. This relationship involved elaborate rituals and exchange of oaths taken on the Bible in a church. At this ceremony, the vassal received a written, ca- written charter on or a staff or even a clod of earth as a symbol of the land given was that was being given to him by his master. The noble enjoyed a privileged status. He had absolute control over his property. In perpetuity, he could raise troops called federal levies. The Lord held his own court of justice and could even coin his own money. He was the lord of all the people settled on his land. He owned vast tracts of land which contained his own dwellings, his private fields and pastures, and the homes and fields of his tenant peasants. His house was called a manor. His private lands were cultivated by peasants who were also expected to act as foot soldiers in battle when required, in addition to working on their own farms. Take a look at this illustration. A manorial estate, England, 13th century. The manorial estate, the lord has had his own manor house. He also controlled villages. Some lords controlled hundreds of villages where peasants lived. A small manorial estate could contain a dozen families, while larger estates might include 50 or 60. Almost everything needed for daily life was found on the estate. Grain was grown in the fields. Blacksmiths and carpenters maintained the lord's implements and repaired his weapons, while stonemasons looked after his buildings. Women spun and wove fabric, and children worked in the lord's presses. The estate had extensive woodlands and forests there the lords hunted. They contained pastures where his cattle and his horses grazed. There was a church on the estate and a castle for defense. Activity 1. Discuss social hatcheries based on different criteria: occupation, language, wealth, education. Compare medieval France with Mesopotamia and the Roman Empire. If my dear Lord is slain, his fate I will share. If he is hanged, then hang me by his side. If to the stake he goes, with him I will burn, and if he is drawn, then let me drown with him. Dundi Mayence, a 13th century French poem, to be sung recounting the adventures of king knights. From the 13th century, some castles were made bigger for use as a residence for a knight's family. In fact, in England, castles were practically unknown before the Norman conquest and developed as centers of political administration and military power under the feudal system. The manor could not be completely self sufficient because salt, millstones, and metalware had to be obtained from outside sources. Those lords who wanted a luxurious lifestyle and were keen to buy rich furnishings, musical instruments, and ornaments not locally produced had to get these from other places. The knights. From the 9th century, there were frequent localized wars in Europe. The amateur peasant soldiers were not sufficient, and good cavalry was needed. This led to the growing importance of a new section of people, the knights. They were linked to the lords just as they later were linked to the king. The lord gave the knight a piece of land called fief and promised to protect it. The fief could be inherited. It extended to anything between 1,000 and 2,000 acres or more, including a house for the knight and his family, a church and other establishment to house his dependents, besides a watermill and a wine press. As in the feudal manor, the land of the fief was cultivated by peasants. In exchange, the knight had paid his lord a regular fee and promised to fight for him in war. To keep up their skills, knights spent time each day fencing and practicing tactics with dummies. A knight might serve more than one lord, but his foremost loyalty was to his own lord. In France, from the 12th century, minstrels traveled from manor to manor, singing songs which told stories partly historical, partly invented about brave kings and knights. In an age when not too many people could read and manuscripts were few, these travelling birds were very popular. Many manors had a narrow balcony above the large hall where the people of the manor gathered for meals. This was the minstrel gallery from where singers entertained nobles while they feasted. They first ordered the clergy. The Catholic Church had its own laws, own lands given to it by rulers and could levy taxes. It was thus a powerful institution which did not depend on the king. At the head of the Western Church was the Pope. He lived in Rome. The Christians in Europe were guided by bishops and clerics who constituted the first order. Most villages had their own church, where people assembled every Sunday to listen to the sermon by the priest and to pray together. Everyone could not become a priest. Serfs were banned as well. The physical challenged women could not become priests. Men who become priests could not marry. Bishops were the religious nobility like lords who owned vast landed estates. The bishops also had the use of vast estate and lived in grand palaces. The church was entitled to a tenth share of whatever the peasants produced from their land over the course of the year, called a tithe. Money also came in the form of endowments made by the rich for their own welfare and the welfare of their deceased relatives in the afterlife. Some of the important ceremonies conducted by the church copied formal customs of the feudal elite. The act of caning while praying with hands clasped and head bowed was an exact replica of the way in which a knight conducted himself while taking vows of loyalty to his lord. Similarly, the use of the term Lord for God was another example of feudal culture that found its way into the practices of the church. Thus, the religious and the levels of feudalism shared many customs and symbols. Activity 2. Discuss examples of expected patterns of behavior between people of different social levels. In a medieval manner, a palace and in a place of worship. The word monastery is derived from the Greek word monos, meaning someone who lives alone. Monks. Apart from the church, a devout Christian had another kind of organization. Some deeply religious people choose to live isolated lives. In contrast to clerics who lived amongst people in towns and villages, they lived in religious communities called abbeys or monasteries, often in places very far from human habitation. Two of the more well-known monasteries were those established by St. Benedict in Italy in 529 and of Cluny in Burgundy in 910. Monks took vows to remain in the abbey for the rest of their lives and to spend their time in prayer, study, and manual labor like farming. Unlike a priesthood, this life was open to both men and women. Men became monks and women nuns. Except in a few cases, all abbeys were single sex communities, that is, there were separate abbeys for men and women. Like priests, monks, and nuns did not marry. From small communities of 10 or 20 men or women, monasteries grew to communities often of several hundred with large buildings and landed estates with attached schools or colleges and hospitals. They contributed to the development of the arts. Abbess Hildegard C. page 135 was a gifted musician and did much to develop the practice of community singing of prayers in church. From the 13th century, some groups of monks called friars chose not to be based in a monastery but to move from place to place, preaching to the people and living on charity. Take a look at this illustration. St. Michael's Benedictine Abbey in Farnborough, England. Take a look at this illustration. A Benedict monk working on a manuscript woodcut. In Benedictine monasteries, there was a manuscript with 73 chapters of rulers, which were followed by monks for many centuries. Here are some of the rules they had followed. Chapter 6, permission to speak should rarely be granted to monks. Chapter 7, humility means obedience. Chapter 33, humility means obedience. Chapter 33, no monk should own private property. Chapter 47, idleness is the enemy of the soul. So, friars and sisters should be occupied at certain times in manual labor and at fixed hours in sacred reading. Chapter 48, the monastery should be laid out in such a way that all necessities be found within its bounds, water, milk, garden, workshops. A monk who travels to distant shrines. By the 14th century, there was a growing uncertainty about the value and purpose of monasticism in England. Langland's poem Piers Plowman 1360 to 70 contrasted the ease and luxury of the lives of some monks with the pure faith of simple plugmen and shepherds and poor common labourers. Also in England, Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales, see box below, which had comic portraits of the nun, a monk, and a friar. The church and society, through European become Christian, they still held on to some of their old beliefs in magic and folk traditions. Christmas and Easter became important dates from the 4th century. Christ's birth, celebrated on 25th December, replaced an old pre Roman festival, the date of which was calculated by the solar calendar. Easter marked the crucifixion of Christ and his rising from the dead, but its date was not a fixed one because it replaced an older festival to celebrate the coming of spring after a long winter, dated by the lunar calendar. Traditionally, on that day, people of each village used to make a tour of their village lands. With the coming of Christianity, they continued to do this, but they called the village the parish, the area under the supervision of the priest. Overworked peasants welcomed holidays because they were not expected to work then. These days were meant for prayer, but people usually spent a good part of them having fun and feasting. Pilgrimages was an important part of a Christian's life, and many people went on long journeys to shrines of martyrs or to big churches. When in April the sweat showers fall and pierce the drought of March to the root, and the small birds are making melody that sleep away the night with open eye. So nature pricks them and their heart engages. Then people long to go on pilgrimages. The palmers long to seek the foreign strands of far off saints revered in various lands, and especially from every shrine of England, a Canterbury, they make their journey. Geoffrey Chaucer, 1340 to 1400, the Canterbury Tales. This was written in Middle English, and the verse is a translation in modern English. The third order, peasant, free and unfree. Let us now turn to the vast majority of people, namely those who sustained the first two orders. Cultivators were of two kinds, free peasants and serfs, were from the verb to serve. Free peasants held their farms as tenants of the Lord. The man had to render military services at least 40 days every year. Peasant families had to set aside certain days of the week, usually three but often more, when they would go to the Lord's estate and work there. The output from such labor, called labor rent, would go directly to the Lord. In addition, they could be required to do other unpaid labor services like digging ditches, gathering firewood, building fences, and repairing roads and buildings. Besides helping in the fields, women and children had to do other tasks. They spun thread, wove cloth, made candles, and pressed grapes to prepare wine for the Lord's use. There was one direct tax called taille that king kings sometimes imposed on peasants. The clergy and nobles were exempted from paying this. Take a look at this Illustration: The Plugman. An English plugman, 16th century sketch. Serfs cultivated plots of land, but these belonged to the lord. Much of the produce from this had to be given to the lord. They also had to work on the land which belonged exclusively to the lord. They received no wages and could not leave the estate without the lord's permission. The lord claimed a number of monopolies at the expense of his serfs. Serfs could use only their lord's mill to grind their flour, his oven to bake their bread, and his wine presses to distill wine and beer. The lord could decide whom a serf should marry or might give his blessings to the serf's choice, but on payment of a fee. The present Queen of England is descended from William I. England. Feudalism developed in England from the 11th century. The Angles and Saxons from Central Europe had settled in England in the 6th century. The country's name, England, is a variant of Angel Land. In the 11th century, William, the Duke of Normandy, crossed the English Channel with an army and defeated the second King of England. From this time, France and England were often at war because of disputes over territory and trade. William I had the land mapped and distributed it in sections to 180 Norman nobles who had migrated with him. The lord became the chieftains of the king and were expected to give him military help. They were obligated to supply a certain number of knights to the king. They soon began to gift some of their own lands to king knights who would serve them just as they in turn served the king. They could not, however, use their knights for private warfare, which was forbidden in England. Anglo-Saxon peasants became tenants of various levels of landholders. Take a look at this illustration. Havercastle, England, 13th century. Factors affecting social and economic relations. While members of the first two orders saw the social system as stable and unchanging, there were several processes which were transforming the system. Some of these, such as changes in the environment, were gradual and almost imperceptible. Others were more dramatic, like the changes in agriculture technology and land use. These, in turn, were shaped by and had an effect on the social and economic ties between lords and vassals. Let us examine these processes by one. The environment. From the 5th to the 10th centuries, most of Europe was covered with vast forests. Thus, the land available for agriculture was limited. Also, peasants dissatisfied with their conditions could flee from oppressions and take refuge in the forest. Europe was undergoing an intensely cold climatic spell in this period. This led to severe and prolonged winters, a shortened growing season for crops, and reduced yields from agriculture. From the 11th century, Europe entered a warm phase. Average temperature increased, which had a profound effect on agriculture. Peasants now had a longer growing season, and the soil, now less subjected to frost, could be more easily plugged. Environmental historians have noted that there was a significant resting of the forest line in many parts of Europe. This made expansion of the area under cultivation possible. Land use. Initially, agriculture technology was very primitive. The only mechanical aid available to the peasant was the wooden plug drawn by a team of oxen. This plug could at best scratch the surface of the earth and was unable to fully draw out the natural productivity of the soil. Agriculture was therefore very labor intensive. Fields had to be dug by hand, often served once in 4 years, and enormous manual labor was required. Also, an ineffective method of crop rotation was in use. The land was divided in half. One field was planted in autumn with winter wheat. While the other field was left fallow, rye was planted on this piece of fallow land the next year, while the other half was put to fallow. With this system, the soil slowly deteriorated and famines were not uncommon. Chronic malnutrition altered with devastating famines and life was difficult for the poor. Despite these hardships, the Lord were anxious to maximize their incomes, since it was not possible to increase output from the land. The peasants were forced to bring under cultivation all the land in the manorial estate and spend more time doing this than they were legally bound to do. The peasants did not bow quietly to oppression since they could not protest openly. They resorted to passive resistance. They spent more time cultivating their own fields and kept much of the product of the labor for themselves. They also avoided performing unpaid extra services. They came into conflict with the lords over pasture and forest lands and saw these lands as resources to be used by the whole community, while the lords treated these as their private property. New agriculture technology. By the 11th century, there is evidence of several technological changes. Instead of the basic wooden plugs, cultivators began using heavy iron tipped plugs and mold boards. These plugs could dig much deeper, and the mold boards turned the topsoil properly. With this, the nutrients from the soil were better utilized. The method of harnessing animals to the plug improved. Instead of the neck harness, the shoulder harness came into use. This enabled animals to exert greater power. Horses were now better shod with iron horses shoe, which prevented foot decay. There was increased use of wind and water energy for agriculture. More water powered and wind powered mills were set up all over Europe for purposes like milling corn and pressing grapes. There were also changes in land use. The most voluntary one was the switch from a two field to a three field system. In these, peasants could use a field 2 years out of the three if they planted it with one crop in autumn and a different crop in spring a year and a half later. That meant that farmers could break their holdings into three fields. They could plant one with wheat or rye in autumn for human consumption. The second could be used in spring to raise peas, beans, and lentils for human use, and oats and barley for the horses. The third field lay fallow. Each year they rotated the use among the three fields. With these improvements, there was an almost immediate increase in the amount of food produced from each unit of land. Food availability doubled. The greater use of plants like peas and beans meant more vegetable protein in the diet of the average European and a better source of food for their animals. For cultivators, it meant better opportunities. They could now produce more food from less land. The average size of peasants' farm shrank from about 100 acres to 20 to 30 acres by the 13th century. Holdings which were smaller could be more efficiently cultivated and reduced the amount of labor needed. This gave the peasants time for other activities. Some of these technological changes cost a lot of money. Peasants did not have enough money to set up watermills and windmills. Therefore, the initiative was taken by the lords, but peasants were able to take the initiative in many things, such as extending arable land. They also switched to the three field rotation of crops and set up small forks and smithies in the villages where iron tipped plugs and horseshoes were made and repaired cheaply. From the 11th century, the personal bonds that had been the basics of feudalism were weakening because economic transactions were becoming more and more money based. Lords found it convenient to ask for rent in cash, not services, and cultivators were selling their crops for money instead of exchanging them for other goods to traders. who would then take such goods to be sold in the towns. The increasing use of money began to influence prices, which became higher in times of poor harvests. In England, for instance, agriculture prices doubled between the 1270s and the 1320s. A fourth order, new towns and townspeople. Expansion in agriculture was accompanied by growth in three related areas: population, trade, and towns. From roughly 42 million in 1000 Europe, the population stood at 62 million around 1273 million in 1300. Better food maintained longer lifespan. By the 13th century, an average European could expect to live 10 years longer than in the 8th century. Women and girls had shorter lifespan compared to men because they later ate better food. The towns of the Roman Empire had become deserted and ruined after its fall. But from the 11th century, as agriculture increased and became able to sustain higher levels of population, towns began to grow again. Peasants who had a surplus grain to sell needed a place where they could set up a selling center and where they could buy tools and cloth. This led to the growth of periodic fairs and small marketing centers, which gradually developed. A town like features a town square, a church, a roads where merchants built shops and homes, an office where those who governed the town could meet. In other places, towns grew around larger castles, by shops, estates, or large churches. In towns, instead of services, people paid a tax to the lord who owned the land on which the town stood. Towns offered the prospect of paid and freedom from the land's control for the young people from peasant families. Take a look at this illustration. Rhymes French cathedral town 17th century map. Activity 3. Look carefully at this map and the drawing of a town. What would you notice as special feature of medieval European towns? How were they different from towns in other places and other periods of time? Town air makes free was a popular saying. Many serfs carving to be free ran away and hid in towns. If a serf could stay for 1 year and one day without his lord discovering him, he would become a free man. Many people in towns were free peasants or escaped serfs who provided unskilled labor. Shopkeepers and merchants were numerous. Later, there was need for individuals with specialized skills like bankers and lawyers. The bigger towns had population of about 30,000. They could be said to have formed a fourth order. The basic of economic organization was the guild. Each craft of or industry was organized into a guild, an association which controlled the quality of the product, its price, and its sale. The guild hall was a feature of every town. It was the building for ceremonial functions and where the heads of all the guilds met formally. Guards patrolled the town walls, and musicians were called to play at fairs and in civil procession. And innkeepers looked after travelers. By the 11th century, new trade routes with West Asia were developing. See theme 5. Scandinavian merchants were sailing south from the North Sea to exchange furs and hunting hammocks for cloth. English traders came to sell tin in France. By the 12th century, commerce and crafts began to grow. Earlier, craftsmen used to travel from manor to manor. Now they found it easier to settle in one place where goods could be produced and traded for food. As the number of towns grew and trade continued to expand, town merchants became rich and powerful and revealed the power of the nobility. Take a look at this illustration. Salisbury Cathedral, England. Cathedral towns. One of the ways that rich merchants spent their money was by making donations to churches. From the 12th century, large churches called cathedrals were being built in France. These churches, called cathedrals, these belonged to monasteries, but different groups of people contributed to their construction with their own labor, material, or money. Cathedrals were built of stone and took many years to complete, as they were being built, the area around the cathedrals became more populated, and when they were completed, they became centers of became centers of pilgrimage. The small towns developed around them. Cathedrals were designed so that the priest's voice could be heard clearly within the hall where large numbers of people gathered, and so that the singing by monks could sound beautiful and the chiming bells calling people to prayer could be heard over a great distance. Stained glass was used for windows. During the day, the sunlight would make them radiant for people inside the cathedral, and after sunset, the light of candles would make them visible to people outside. The stained glass windows narrated the stories in the Bible through pictures which illiterate people could read. Take a look at this illustration. Stained glass window, Chartres Cathedral, France, 15th century. Because of the inadequacy which we often felt on feast days, for the narrowness of the place forced the women to run towards the altar upon the heads of the men. With much anguish and noisy confusion, we decided to enlarge and amplify the noble church. We also caused it to be painted by the exquisite hands of many masters from different regions. A splendid variety of new windows, because these windows are very valuable on account of their wonderful execution and the profuse expenditure of painted glass and separate glass. We appointed an official master craftsman of their protection, and also a goldsmith who would receive their allowance, namely coins from the altar and floor from the common storehouse of the brethren, and who would never neglect their duty to look after these works of art. About Sugar, 1081 to 1151, about the Abbey of St. Denis near Paris. The crisis of the 14th century. By the early 14th century, Europe's economic expansion slowed down. This was due to three factors. In Northern Europe, by the end of the 13th century, the warm summers of the previous 300 years had given way to bitterly cold summers. Seasons for growing crops were reduced by a month, and it became difficult to grow crops on higher ground. Storms and oceanic flooding destroyed many farmsteads, which resulted in less income in taxes for governments. The opportunities offered by favorable climatic conditions before the 13th century had led to large scale reclamation of the land of forests and pastures for agriculture. But intensive plugging had exhausted the soil despite the practice of the three-field ration of crops, because clearance was not accompanied by proper soil conservation. The shortage of pasturage reduced the number of cattle. Population growth was outstripping resources, and the immediate result was famine. Several famines hit Europe between 1315 and 1317, followed in the 1320s by massive cattle deaths. In addition, trade was hit by a severe shortage of metal money because of a shortfall in the output of silver mines in Austria and Serbia. This forced governments to reduce the silver content of the currency and to mix it with cheaper metals. The worst was yet to come as trade expanded in the 13th and 14th centuries. Ship, ships carrying goods from distant countries had started arriving in European ports. Along with the ships came rats carrying the deadly bubonic plague infection, the Black Death. Western Europe, relatively isolated in earlier centuries, was hit by the epidemic between 1347 and 1350. The modern estimate of mortality in that epidemic is that 20% of the people of the whole of Europe died, with some places losing as much as 40% of the population. How many valiant men, how many fair ladies had breakfast with their kinfolk and the same night suppered with their ancestors in the next world. The condition of the people was pitiable to behold. They sickened by the thousands daily, and died unattended and without help. Many died in the open street, others dying in their houses, made it known by the stench of their rotting bodies. Consecrated churchyards did not suffice for the burial of the vast multitude of bodies which were heaped by the hundreds in vast trenches like goods in ships, hold and covered with a little earth. Giovanni Boccaccio, 1313 to 75, Italian author. As trade center cities were the hardest hit in enclosed communities like monasteries and convents. When one individual contracted the plague, it was not long before everyone did, and in almost every case, none survived. The plague took its worst toll among infants, the young, and the elderly. There were other relatively minor episodes of plague in the 1360s and 1370s. The population of Europe, 73 million in 1300, stood reduced to 45 million in 1400. This catastrophe, combined with the economic crisis, caused immense social dislocation. Depopulation resulted in a major shortage of labor. Serious imbalances were created between agriculture and manufacture because there were not enough people to engage in both equally. Prices of agricultural goods dropped as there were fewer people to buy. Wage rates increased because the demand for labor, particularly agriculture labor, rose in England by as much as to 50% in the aftermath of the Black Death. The surviving labor force could now demand twice their earlier wages. Social unrest. The income of lords was thus badly hit. It declined as agriculture prices came down and wages of laborers increased. In desperation, they tried to give up the money contracts they had entered into and revive labor services. This was violently opposed by peasants, particularly the better educated and more prosperous one. In 1323, peasants revolted in Flanders, in 1358 in France, and in 1381 in England. Though these rebellions were ruthlessly crushed, it is significant that they occurred with the most violent intensity in those areas which had experienced the prosperity of the economic expansion, a sign that peasants were attempting to protect the gains that they had made in previous centuries despite the severe repression. The sheer intensity of peasants' opposition ensured that the old feudal relations could not be reimposed. The most economy was too far advanced to be reversed. Therefore, though the lords succeeded in crushing the revolts, the peasants ensured that the federal privileges of earlier days could not be reinvented. Activity 4. Read through the events and process listed with dates and connect them into a narrative account. Take a look at illustration. Queen Elizabeth I of England at a picnic, late 16th century, 11th to 14th centuries. 1060 Normans at Anglo-Saxons and conquer England, 1100 onwards. Cathedrals being built in France, 1315 to 17. Great famine in Europe, 1347 to 50. Black Death, 1338 to 1460. 100 years war between England and France, 1381. Peasants' revolts, political changes. Developments in the political sphere paralleled social progress in the 15th and 16th centuries. European kings strengthened their military and financial power. The powerful new states they created were as significant for Europe as the economic changes that were occurring. Historians have therefore called these kings The new monarch Louis XI in France, Maximilian in Austria, Henry VII in England, and Isabel and Ferdinand in Spain were absolutist rulers who started the process of organizing standing armies, a permanent bureaucracy, and national taxation. And in Spain and Portugal began to play a role in Europe's expansion overseas. See theme 8. The most important reason for the trump of these monarchies was the social changes which had taken place in the 12th and 13th centuries. The dissolution of the feudal system of lordship and vassals and the slow rate of economic growth had given the first opportunity to kings to increase their control over their powerful and not so powerful subjects. Rulers dispensed with the system of feudal levies for their armies and introduced proficiently trained infantry equipped with guns and siege artillery signified directly under their control. The resistance of the aristocracies crumbled in the face of the firepower of the kings. The new monarchy 1461 to 1559 new monarchs in France, 1474 to 1556 new monarchs in Spain, 1485 to 1547 new monarchs in England. Take a look at illustration. Numerous castle France 15th century. By increasing taxes, monarchs got enough revenues to support larger armies and thus defended and expanded their frontiers and overcame internal resistance to royal authority. Centralization, however, did not occur without resistance from the aristocracy. A common thread running through all types of opposition to the monarchies was the questions of taxation. In England, rebellions occurred and were put down in 1497, 1536, 1547, 1549, and 1553 in France. Louis XI, 1461 to 83, had to wage a long struggle against dukes and princes. Lesser nobles, after often members of local assemblies, resisted this royal usurpation of their powers. The religious wars in France in the 16th century were in part a contest between royal privileges and regional liberties. The nobility managed a tactical shift in order to ensure their survival. From beginning opponents to the new regimes, they quickly transformed themselves into loyalists. It is for this reason that royal absolution has been called a modified form of feudalism. Pre- Precisely the same class of people who had been rulers in the feudal system, the lords continued to dominate the political sense. They were given permanent positions in the administrative services. But the new regimes were different in some important ways. The king was no longer at the apex of a pyramid where loyalty had been a matter of personal dependence and trust. He was now at the center of an elaborate courtier society and a new network of a patron client relationship. All monarchies, weak or powerful, needed the cooperation of those who could command authority. Patronage became the means of ensuring such cooperation, and patronage could be given or obtained by means of money. Therefore, money became an important way in which non aristocratic elements like merchants and bankers could gain access to the court. They lent money to the kings, who used it to pay the wages of soldiers. Rulers thus made space for non federal elements in the state system. The later history of France and England was to be shaped by these changes in the power structures. In the reign of the child king Louis XIII of France in 1614, a meeting was held of the French consultative assembly known as the Estates General, with three houses to represent the three estates orders, clergy, nobility, and the rest. After this, it was not summoned again for nearly 2 centuries till 1789 because the king did not want to share power with the three orders. What happened in England was very different. Even before the Norman conquest, the Anglo Saxons had a great council which the king had to consult before imposing any tax. This developed into what was called the Parliament, which consisted of the House of Lords, the members of which were the Lords and the clergy, and the House of Commons representing towns and rural areas. King Charles I ruled for 11 years, 1629 to 40, without calling Parliament. When he was forced to call it because he needed money, a section of Parliament decided to go to war against him and later executed him and established a republic. This did not last long and monarchy was restored, but on the condition that Parliament would be called regularly. Today, France has a republican form of government and England has a monarchy. This is because of the different directions that the histories of the two countries took after the 17th century. Exercises. Answer in brief. Describe two features of early feudal society in France. Question number 2. How did long-term changes in population levels affect economy and society in Europe? Question number 3. Why did knights become a Disney group and when did they decline? Question number 4. What was the function of medieval monasteries? Answer in a short essay. Question number 5. Imagine and describe a day in the life of a craftsman in a medieval French town. Question number 6. Compare the conditions of life for a French serf and a Roman slave. Thank you.